All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome to CoreConnect's Core Summit Webinar Series 2021. What a week we are having. We're only day 4 into the new monumental day. And this discussion today is going to be a lot of fun because I think it plays well into the whole the theme of our discussion. But before we dive in, I think it's important that you get to meet our guests. And you've met them before, but it always helps to understand who they are. Max, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Oscar. I'm Max Rich. I'm Republic's Deputy General Counsel, and I serve as the Chief Compliance Officer of Republic's funding portal. We're one of the larger Reg crowdfunding portals and have been in the space since 2016.
Jason, please.
Absolutely, and pleasure to be here with you, Max, especially this week. Oscar, thanks for having me again. I'm Jason Fishman. I'm a marketer. I've been working on investor acquisition campaigns since 2014 with my agency, DNA. First accredited investor, Reg Ds. We've been working on RegCFs right out of the gate, so have been anxiously awaiting this expansion, and began on Reg A Plus campaigns in 2016 as an agency as well. Over 200 campaigns to date, 9 figures in funding. I've worked on over 12 portals, including Republic, and have had Chuck on my podcast, Test Optimized Scale, big Republic fan. So again, it's an honor to be here with you, gentlemen.
Well, it's great. I'm glad. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm glad. Max, I actually didn't know if you knew Jason. So when I saw both your names together, I go, this is great. East Coast, West Coast.
It's a smaller community than you think.
Well, it does take a few hours to drive it, but you're right. With the internet today, it's just one thing away. Listen, today's just the discussion we're going to have just for everyone. It's really, it's kind of a fireside chat. Grab a cup of coffee, have a little Java juice. We're going to have a discussion about the importance of, what it means to have people that know what they're doing. And I think this plays so well into what just happened a few days ago. I think it's going to be part of that. We're going to certainly bring that up. But let me remind everyone why we're so excited. We're so excited that as of Monday, March the 15th, 2021, you as a company can raise up to $5 million from the general public. I mean, this is a 5x increase from where we were before. It's a monumental milestone that the industry has reached. And from here on, it's just, as they say, it's not smooth sailing. It's just going to become even more critical. So, gents, today, I had one yesterday regarding Reg A. Obviously, we use the term team sport a lot in Reg A because it requires a lot of different people involved in the capital raise. But sometimes we take it for granted that sometimes in RegCF, it's just purely the funding portal, maybe the lawyer, and that's it. But that's not always the case. So I'm going to start with you, Max. I mean, tell us first of all, your role as compliance officer and when you're working with companies, how many other participants are you working with that are externalized to help that company achieve its goal in either getting listed and then, of course, to have a successful raise?
Yeah, so you make a good point, which is that there's a difference between getting listed and preparing for the offering and then conducting it successfully. To get listed, you have to convince a funding portal such as Republic or many of our other illustrious colleagues and competitors to host your deal. Funding portals have an obligation to do an assessment for fraud and other nefarious activities, and then each has its own independent listing standards, which can be either based on anyone who shows up will host, or some like Republic, we're a little bit more judicious and we have objective criteria that you need to meet to come onto our platform. But to get there either way, you'll need to prepare a pitch deck, a business plan. You'll need to have some traction. You'll need to have some trusted advisors to make the right introductions for you so that you can get connected to a platform. We do get a lot of cold inbound, but the best way to get introduced to a platform is through a warm introduction. So trusted advisors and marketing help is great. When you're preparing for the offering, you will need a trusted attorney who's done this before. I'm an attorney myself, and I've worked with too many attorneys who are trying to be in the space but don't actually understand securities law. They say, oh, I help my client with intellectual property, I can do this. Or, oh, I'm a litigation attorney and I met this client because they had a minor in litigation, I can help them with this crowdfunding. And securities law is like an old club. It's not a boys club because it's very diverse, but it's an old club, and you need to be in it, and you need to be steeped in it to really understand how it works. And so it's critical that you have an attorney working with you that actually understands securities law, because it's serious. You'll also need a CPA in many situations, whether to get reviewed or audited financials. And you may need a business advisor if you're trying to shore up your business plan or make decisions about the terms of your security. Once the offering goes live, those people are still important for keeping you compliant and helping you be ready if and when your offering ends and you need to do continual reporting. But you do need trusted advisors to help you with the marketing for two reasons. One, marketing drives investment dollars, but two, since it's a regulated activity, you need to know how to market within the rule scope. You can't just shout from rooftops, invest in my company and you'll make 100x. It's a very bad idea. So it's important to find vendors who can provide marketing guidance and support to you that will both produce investment dollars into your offering, but also not get you in trouble with a regulator during or after the offering.
Sorry, I sometimes forget I'm still in mute. So, you mentioned, I like the word trusted. It's funny how the language of trust is becoming so critical in the online world. I don't know if you caught on to that, Jason. You and I had a discussion about this. This is one of the things that I'm a big believer on. I have been for the last 11 years, that the whole phenomenon of online investing does not take away from that whole component of trust. It is the essential piece, and it's still humanly driven. Look at that, it's still humanly driven. You can use the tools to connect, but you need those connecting parts. So, but thank you for those points. And lawyer, auditor, you also mentioned business advisor. We'll get back to that. But I want to go on to you, Jason, because obviously you've had seen both Reg A and RegCF. From your point of view, outside of the activities you do, which I want you to describe as well, but what do you see essentially the size of the team that it takes to deliver that type of offering versus a RegCF? Because because there are companies that are going to do both, and it's in my view, it's overwhelming. But that's just, I get to see it from the outside. Be interesting to hear from your point of view.
Absolutely. I want to get back to that trust factor, but to hop right into your question, Reg A Plus, RegCF campaign, just by nature, the Reg A Plus team, the internal issuer team, is going to be larger based on the value of the organization, where they're at. We have solopreneurs to an extent with team members who are less part of the day-to-day on RegCF campaigns. Reg A Plus, usually a lot of moving departments at that point. So you have the initial team, I would say anywhere from 5 to 25 people in many cases that I'm seeing. I'm talking to much larger organizations that are now approaching this type of filing, this type of campaign. But beyond that, I'm a big fan of Core Connect's community and bringing in a lot of the top service providers. That whole team bringing any resource to the table that's going to be able to amplify what's occurring and get to the goal, get to it quicker, I definitely support. So we'll work alongside other marketing agencies in many cases. Many of the portals have in-house marketing teams at this point, including Republic, who has great marketing in-house resources. Start Engine has Promote. Different groups have in-house team members who can support with these things. And I really look at the ecosystem as a collaborative versus any type of competition in that regard. So even speaking just to marketing, if there's video groups that are coming on board. PR, various types of email newsletter providers. All of these are additional tactics, additional, to use the word resources again, to get to that goal. If you look at the success rates, and Oscar, I know you guys just put out some metrics for RegCF, and it looked like there was about 1,000 deals. If I'm not mistaken, somewhere around 228 that raised seven figures or more. The majority of deals are not hitting their benchmarks. So really looking to bring whatever you can to the table to get there. Excited to see the success rates improve over the past 12 months. But again, just examining the marketing side of things, we'll generally see 3 or more groups involved through the duration of the filing, through the 12 months. Definitely legal, different advisors working on the audit, a much more in-depth audit than RegCF, of course. So I think it's not uncommon to see 8 or more different entities collaborating on a Reg A plus. Would have to look at the exact data to give you a more concise range, but just as an average, looking at campaigns we've worked on and different pivots they've had to make throughout the Reg A plus process. Then in terms of what we do, and going back to trust, as a whole, as a rule of thumb, people don't believe what they see online. So putting elements of social proof in an offering page, in the landing page that funnels into that offering statement, to any marketing assets that are being used, whether it's paid via advertising or organic from content marketing, that are the driver. If you're able to showcase elements of third-party validation, it is typically reflected in the click-through and conversion rate. If it shows publishers that have featured you, different types of industry partners that serve as a vertical validation, endorsements from, I don't want to misuse the word influencers, but individuals, groups with a existing loyal, engaged audience. These all go a very long way. So, to do the top line of what we do, we create marketing funnels and test traffic sources to drive in to that funnel. The funnel is designed to take audiences from awareness, consideration, intent to a point of conversion, to a point of investment. More importantly, below that, we're seeing second investments take place a greater and greater percentage of the time, but peer-to-peer marketing is what we're really playing for. We want an investor to come in, participate, share with their friends, their peers, their family, and really maximize all of these traffic sources based on that occurrence. So marketing funnels, trafficking within, testing, optimizing, and scaling throughout the entire process.
Okay. And so I summarized it into 3 buckets. The only bucket that I added that we had not heard before, which is the one that you brought in, Max, which is the biz advisor. I mean, the commonalities from legal, audit, investor acquisition, it's the same in Reg A, and the importance of it. You did touch on a really good point there, Max. I think it's important for the audience to hear, including my 8-month-old who's teething in the background. You guys love him? Maximus is telling all of you, listen to this part. This is the important part. I agree with everything that you have to say regarding lawyers. I like lawyers. And I remember when Max and I first started talking, you recall years back, and he has been a student of this industry, and because he already had the legal background, he immersed himself into it and all that, and it becomes a different world. So you can't just come from commercial real estate and say, oh yeah, I can do a Form C. It's not just a form. It's I want to be very clear. This becomes a critical piece. Accounting is accounting. That is, I think it's pretty straight. It only depends on the size of company you are. But I do want to emphasize on the legal part, because I have been recently dealing with 2 scenarios. I don't know if you run into this, Max. I'd like to hear your feedback, where We have a lawyer who runs the firm. Oh yeah, I'm going to use RegCF. I'm going to create my own Form C. Have you done it before? Oh, come on, I'm a lawyer. I should be. No, that isn't the question. It's not. I'm not questioning your legal capabilities. I'm questioning whether you've done a Form C before, what the requirements are, because it does make a difference what you're putting in. And so I'm not discrediting people. I think it's important to have them as advisory. But I think it's probably the most critical piece. One, and I'd like to hear your feedback on it. But then I want you to also talk to me about, we're now getting to the stage, Max, that the issuer has choices. And we've always had choices. But now the choice you make on the funding portal, let's say with all the introductions and all that, but it's just as important that that you pick the right portal for the right reasons for you. I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, those are great points, Oscar. We dealt with a number of companies that were started by lawyers or have lawyers in-house. And with few exceptions, we do not let them use those people to prepare the Form C. We've had one or two companies where they had a dedicated general counsel who was an actual securities lawyer by training, and we were comfortable with them doing the legal work in-house because they truly were the full-time lawyer. They had the right stuff. But we've also hosted companies that were like liquor companies where the guy used to be a lawyer and then decided he didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, and he's the CEO of a liquor company. And we basically said, look, you're not acting in an independent capacity. The point of a disclosure form is to be objective. It's very hard to be objective when you're describing yourself. You should find someone qualified who's not you to do this. So it's not just a matter of having a lawyer that has the relevant knowledge. It's also having a lawyer that's independent of the issuer, because someone who's in your pocket is not going to encourage you to make the right disclosures or make the right calls on materiality, because there's just that inherent conflict of interest. On the other end, which you said is choosing your platform or your portal, they're all different, right? They have different listing standards, and they have different advantages and disadvantages, and they have different ways of going about their deals. We're big proponents of the safe, and we use custodial accounts in certain situations, and we offer real estate deals. There are other platforms that are all about issuing common stock directly to people, but having them proxy their voting and information rights to a lead investor. There are platforms dedicated solely to debt, and platforms dedicated solely to water. So picking your platform is kind of like picking your college or high school if you were lucky enough to be able to choose. You want to find the one that best aligns with your goals and your interests, and that's both what you're trying to offer and who you want to purchase it.
And that's a good point, because it's so important to look at that now more than ever, because we're seeing verticals, right? We're going to see this where it's a little bit different, and sometimes, like the advice I give people, you have choices, but you have to do your homework. You need to know which one provides, which audience matches your opportunity. And Jason, I'll bring it back to you, because you're often having to do the marketing. Does that make a big difference? Does it matter so much about the funding portal? Let's say I have a vegetarian play, and I'm in a tech funding platform. Does it really matter, or I'm just rather curious to hear that from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one part of the equation. It's not the sole factor. It's not to say you list on one portal, your campaign is successful regardless of the vertical. A lot of moving pieces, I should emphasize before getting into it. We are unbiased towards which portal an issuer should select. The type of questions, the type of considerations that I hear on a daily basis consist of investor audience size, successful deal rate, and there's all types of great platforms to look at those analytics today, niche focus, and investors with that type of affinity. These are all part of the discussion. I, of course, want to look at conversion rate. If the conversion rate, if the average investment value are low, it's going to significantly impact the returns that marketing produces. On some portals, it's more common for these days a $250 to $500 average investment value, where it makes exponential difference if it's 500 to 1,000, really 750 to 1,000 as the average investment of value, taking into account minimum level investors as well as individuals participating at 5, 10, 25, higher thousands of dollars at a time. So these are all different components that I look at in comparison at times. I always recommend that issuers speak with multiple parties. They explore hosting it on their own platform. Core connects with the tools that you guys have. You're obviously able to speak to a lot of those advantages where data can be owned. Also, speaking to multiple portals and getting an understanding of who their campaign manager may be, what type of relationship could develop there. I've seen that team element between the portal play an important role as well too. Even just pointing out the experience that a founder may have. If there is some type of gut response of, hey, we're going to get more attention over here. They talked about different types of campaigns in our vertical, and going back into what Max was saying for vertical focus. Those are all going to be important elements of the decision process. But from there, it's really more strategy than black and white, concrete. Hey, these portals are best for these issuers, and really what you do with it from there. It's like setting up a website. If you're not putting different traffic drivers in place, it's going to get very low visibility. The portals themselves are powerful tools to amplify any traction that's being produced. If you're bringing your first degree connections there, you're bringing in prospective investors through digital marketing traffic, you could see a third, a half of your investments come from the portal itself, but it still involves a heavy effort to get that type of movement on any initiative. So yes, portal selection is important, but still comes down to the issuer at the end of the day.
As you were talking, I was just thinking to myself, we're now getting more precise about what we're looking for. We're telling people, you need your trusted advisors, you need your trusted clients, you need warm introductions, you need your lawyer, you need your auditor. Obviously, Max, I've had two fears recently regarding the increase. I like it, but I also see another fear because statistically speaking, I see that the average investment for 2020 was only 308,000, which is a significant number. There's nothing wrong with it. And I know you guys have never been shy about the dollar amount that the company raises. But what happens when a company doesn't have that? Are you bringing them on? Is there kind of an incubation component to it? Or are we having to rely on or create an ecosystem to support that mechanism to bring them up here? I'm really curious about that because RegCF is the one that gets, Reg A is very different. They got to come loaded or they don't. RegCF, the whole idea was it's for everyone, right? And
yeah.
but you need to have certain things. So I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, so I would say that as the industry developed, listing standards got harder, and there's become a more of a standard for having more developed issuers on platforms because that's what investors are looking for, which has led to higher valuations, but also higher success rates. That being said, that goes against the initial intent of reg crowdfunding, which was to let any company potentially raise money from their neighbors, friends, customers, random people who believe in their mission. We are actively exploring ways to basically open that access back up in a responsible manner, possibly by making a sub-platform that is specifically for very, very early stage companies that don't meet our current listing standards. But, the idea has promise. The company is not run by bad actors. They've taken all the appropriate steps to prepare for crowdfunding. But it is a problem because the industry is slowly moving towards a more mature company audience, somewhat impinging and infringing on what Reg A Plus used to be about, and also trying to compete with Reg D in some respect. So I think the industry as a whole needs to, take a step back and just make sure that they're not cutting out the really little guy who could maybe most benefit from this, with putting appropriate controls in place to make sure that that's not too risky of an investment or not too imprudent of a decision for the investors that we provide access to.
Yeah, the way you worded it, it's rather interesting, but it is true. I mean, my biggest concern, I get black and white about it. My biggest concern is now that it's been increased to 5 million from the existing platforms, better off going after the $5 million deal because it's going to be a more mature company. At least we hope it is, and they're going to become more prepared versus the little guy that only wanted 50,000. But we need to remember. I mean, David Weil reminds me of this, and he did predict this. As soon as the increase occurs, funding portals almost become just like broker dealers. The very people we were criticizing when the Jobs Act was coming around, the intermediaries would not take on smaller deals because it wasn't worth their time. And here's the irony of this. For the very first time, broker dealers are coming into RegCF for the very first time. And why? Because now RegCF is going after their sweet spot, which is the 1 to 5 million. And they'll use it for the step up. But I'm glad to hear, like, for me, to us, it doesn't matter if it's you raise 10,000 or $1 billion. I mean, we got those ranges inside. We don't care if you got one shareholder or 1 million. We have that choice in between. But what scares me is that if nobody thinks about that, and I'm glad to hear you guys are, because these companies that was the intent of the Jobs Act, right? And I know, Jason, for you, it's a little tough because you're a service provider. You're not like a funding portal where you're going to get paid on a commission on success base. You do need to. But are you running against that as well, where the smaller guys now, like I've had a few phone calls now with the smaller guys, the platforms won't take me because I'm just not big enough, or that's at least, hold on a second, I should say this. That's the way they're interpreting it. And you know how people are, right? They'll interpret things the way, but I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, there's been different stages. We've seen some of the portals years back, 2017, 2018, take on a high volume of issuers that didn't hit their milestones, didn't hit their goals, had seen some investor sentiments about the quality of these type of issuers and associating them with portals. And we've actually, been a fan of some of these processes that have been put into place. I look towards them when measuring success over the past 12 months, past 18 months. So I can't say that it's entirely bad for the vertical. And what I'm hearing the portals say isn't, go away, as much as, hey, if you work on these different pieces and come back, you're going to be more successful with our investors. And that's what they're really encouraging is, you come onto a portal, you are bringing your existing clientele, you have a large enough audience that even at a small conversion rate, it's going to be meaningful. If you're showing, 45K, 100K, 200K in a quick window of time from going live, the existing investors on that portal that are starting to receive emails about you and see you in more key placements on those portal sites are going to statistically invest at a higher percentage. where we work with a variety of portals, and some of them will list deals with 3,000 raised, 12,000 raised. And I could tell you it's difficult. It's an uphill battle, and it is encapsulating potentially a lack of audience that wants to be an owner, potentially a user owner, but an owner. So I do believe in the formulas that some of these portals are putting in place, and the recommendations that they provide issuers to get to that point so that they're more successful. And as I'm mentioning here, as a marketer, that they are relevant. There are different factors that, if are in place, success is more likely achievable. That being said, yes, we're talking about issuers who are anticipating to go live on a different platform and are later declined, and that is a tough statement. But we point right back towards those best practices and say, hey, there's other portals you could speak with. There's different ways to list this on your own depending on the filing. But these steps are still going to be important to you if you're going to be able to. If you put these into life, regardless of what platform you're going to be on, you will have a higher probability of hitting your milestones, be it 250K, 500K, some of the lower increments you were mentioning there, Oscar, or whether it's the historical 1.07, 3 million based on valuation size, or the full 5. Those best practices stand true.
Yeah, and it's do you know what I'm hearing here today? And I mean, look, I've heard it bits and pieces everywhere. So the webinars, right? You got the lawyers, or you got other people say, the 5 million is for everyone. So you know what it's like for an entrepreneur to hear that. Oh, I can go. And so you mentioned something, Max, and I don't know if you're at liberty to talk further. I respect that you couldn't, but I like that idea of a sub platform. Because I'm thinking of every. David is working, David Wheel is working with publicly traded companies doing SPACs and, not high end, but he's willing to understand that this is the reason why. And he reminds me why. He goes, Oscar, in order for the United States to get out of debt, and the real growth in the economy is the small business. And I'm like, what? Because it has always always will be, it's the small business. So we can't lose it up, because if you start knocking off one group, you'll knock off another group, and we're back to where we were before. So am I putting you on the spot? If you can talk a little bit more about it, or we'll just go into generality.
Just generally, we've realized that there is a need for smaller companies who really just want to raise a friends and family round, and don't necessarily even want the exposure that a platform may provide to them, which is, sending them to the whole user base. But even under the way Rule 506B works, they'd be better off utilizing Reg crowdfunding rather than having to provide, audited financials to unaccredited investors. So we're exploring ways to basically help companies do their seed rounds through Republic as kind of a sub offering without the same typical amount of promotion, and with smaller offering amounts, and admittedly much smaller valuations, because these would be, literally brand new to incredibly early stage companies. Those that you're investing in because you personally believe in the founder, not perhaps because they have a proven market concept, because they're just too early. But it's still in progress. We're also, Republic works on a bunch of other things like private placements and Reg A pluses ourselves and video game development. So we're always balancing good ideas with the ability to execute on them.
And I'm wondering, how do you think incubators and accelerators, or a new subgroup to help these companies, but they need to understand why they're doing it? Because like I said, I've been having these discussions a lot lately, and people just have this perception, I'm ready to go, I'll just go to the platform. And then they get pushed all the way back. And as you said, Jason, the platforms tell them, okay, you may not be ready now, but where do we send them to? Where do you do you just have, do you have some ideas where they should be going to help them because obviously we now know, and I agree with you 100%, platforms need to do more than what they've done just purely listing, and they need to listen to the investor base. They need to do all that. But if a company has all the requirements, they should have that opportunity to list, right? But I'm not ready yet. So where that readiness preparation, where is that going to happen?
Sure. Preparation. I think that is definitely the title of the article we can write on this, in the sense of there are places that they can list. I'm actually very intrigued, Max, by that element of the portal for public. I think that could be very successful. And there should be a checklist. There should be systems in terms of what to do before, when to go live based on your measurements, what actually is coming to fruition. Not 100% sure on the filing and how it'll be set up, but leveraging test the waters, looking at reservations, at what stage a deal is going to be visibly, let's say, trustable from an audience that has never heard of the brand before, or even just from a customer. There should be different recommendations put in place of, hey, if you go live with, if you start promoting, I should say, with this many investors or this much already raised, if you're leveraging these content channels, if you're sending out a frequency of emails using this type of overarching template to make sure that it's very clear what is being presented, everything compliant, of course, and there are different marketing foundations that they can follow. I would be a larger supporter of it. And I say larger supporter because I do believe there are smaller portals out there that may not necessarily overpromise, but set the wrong expectations for what's going to occur by listing on that platform today. And I'm referencing past conversations that we've had. And when we speak to them as marketers, we try to be very straightforward about what we can do, what we can't do. I'm confident that I can bring historical investment crowdfunding audiences, historical equity crowdfunding investors to an offering page. What they do from there, that's where the variable is going to lie. I can bring them back and back and back with retargeting, get them into different marketing funnels that are going to add more depth to the engagement. But if they're expecting, to hit their goal overnight, if they're expecting to hit a larger goal and surpass that initial metric in a quick window of time, it can become a difficult pivot for them to really wrap their head around. So all of that to say, with the right systems in place, with the right expectations, and really using the platform as the location to point to for their first degree connections, as Max was saying, I definitely see validity to it. Just again, want to make sure the communication is there and all parties are playing for the same actual goals, because I don't see that to always be the case today.
Thank you for that. And I like that preparation, RegCF, and I don't like to toot my own horn, but it's funny that I wrote a book, Equity Crowdfunding 101, 6-7 years ago, and it's still the same valid book. It's all the same things, but we all need to be reminded of this on how to do it. But I'm going to circle back to Max on this one. I know you can't speak of your platform, and I respect that. But let me put it this way. Let me put it from the perspective that you weren't doing it. Where do you think where should these companies be going to? Who could we be training to start beginning those early preparations for those types of companies? Because remember, we're going to be scrutinized later on, saying, "Oh yeah, look at you guys. You guys are no different than the broker dealers." I thought you were there to look at the all it's going to take is one journalist to talk to one little company that applied and got no assistance. So besides what you guys are doing, which is a great initiative, but what could the incubators be a facilitator? Could be the maybe not accelerators, but is there another form that could be that first place where they can help them with all these things that, even to get to the checklist, they need to have all of this?
Yeah, no, we're in active negotiation with some of the most prominent accelerators and incubators for startups to try to get them to make crowdfunding part of their curriculum or part of their playbook. The old YC playbook was get your pitch, put your name in our safe, and go talk to some rich people. We would rather say make your pitch, prepare your Form C, and access the crowd to have proof of concept. So we think that the current market participants that just used to push people towards institutional capital should be pushing them towards the crowd. And I think with the new rules going live and the way that the industry has been on the uptick over the last 5 years, and the lack of fraud and the lack of bad experiences on the whole, it should encourage alignment. And we're hoping to see that come to fruition pretty soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be very, very, and I'm really excited to hear you say that, because I believe that I've spoken to a few incubators and accelerators. I say, hey, I applaud you for your success for the companies that have went to the VC route. I go, so out of 100 companies you get, how many make it through there, and what happens to the other ones? And the other ones just drift away. And the interesting thing is that they just need to add this to their curriculum to make sure that companies understand and to make it preparation. Jason, does anything else come to mind? I mean, those are usually the obvious, but I feel like this client might not even make it through that incubator, you know what I mean, or accelerator program. If I'm a dry cleaning shop, you're not going to go to one of those things. So where are we sending them to? That's where I've been asked that a lot lately. I'm asking everyone, because I'm getting that ask from, I'm having discussions with regulators. I'm having discussions with, the people working on Jobs Act version 4.0. And I was stumped, actually. I really was. They go, be careful what you wish for. Success is there for all of you. So what happens to the little guy? And I'm like, well, I have this, got it, but they need to get to there before there. So who's going to help them here? Jason.
Sure. And we work with accelerators. I just led a 3-day marketing workshop with a group out of Santa Monica here last week. And we're seeing it become a larger and larger part of the conversation. Like Max, that's definitely something that we champion for as well too. If there's an anchor lead investor on the round, it's displayed on an equity crowdfunding portal. It's very likely that with the support of different marketing channels put in place, far more can be raised in that actual sequence. So it's something that we're in conversations for regularly. Oscar, to your point about the smaller organizations, the smaller entities, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm coming off with a negative lens towards this and in my past response. It's just that those success metrics are very real to me. 20-25% of these deals hitting over 7 figures. And we've talked about this before, and you mentioned not all of them are playing for that. Some of them, it's the 50s, it's the 250s. But even if it's a 50K round, just looking at a smaller increment is not to say that it's going to have a 100% success rate. So if there's a 20-35% success rate for those smaller milestones, and I know there's strategies to have a lower external goal at first, surpass that. And from a marketing angle, I could tell you it's very valuable to do so. There's something about the visual appearance of that and the strength in numbers that it provides. But either way, there's going to be a percentage that don't hit their goal. And I'll see different issuers that will list on a platform that will allow them to be there for extended periods of time. And there's very little traction around it. I'm hearing more options for self-serve models that don't require the same type of approval processes. So wherever they go, I would want to make sure that there's the right campaign success support, whether that's marketing. And that's part of why I focus on this, because I feel it's at the front line of performance on many of these deals, with early stage marketing as a whole, to be clear, but particularly in investment crowdfunding. So I would just want to make sure there's the right resources available for them. I know it becomes tougher as well. Some of the top marketing agencies in the space, as we were emerging further and further into it, let's say in 2016, were starting to only focus on Reg A plus deals. They didn't want to talk to a RegCF. And I know that's the case for other types of service providers in the vertical as well. So if we're now starting to talk about 50K, 250K level RegCFs, I would have some concern on how much support they would get, how the numbers shape out there and allow for different parties to, come into the team. I could definitely see the use of templates, not to be copy pasted, but working formulas that can be leveraged for those groups to go out to their friends and family, to start to market, further their target audiences, and also bring them in towards position, towards an interest in the entity. So I definitely see ways it can be done correctly, and I would want to make sure there's a highlight around campaign success formula.
Okay. I apologize if I focused a lot on that. In part of it, it's just, as I said, my concern is that I feel like I'm a custodian of like all of us, of the Jobs Act, and I never want to lose sight of it. In fact, I got a reminder here: the Jobs Act was for everyone, and I always want to make sure that even the one that doesn't know, we give them the tools so they do know, so they can. But that's one part of the equation. We've talked about getting onboarded. We talked about having the lawyers, the auditors, and all that. The part that we didn't talk about in the early days of regulation CF, what happens afterwards? And this has been now, we've all paid dearly. We're thankful that the SEC was grateful enough to increase the limit, but we need to applaud them, first of all, one. Number two, we need to make sure that we correct what has been occurring up until now to rectify some of these things. And the education is going to be critical during this part, where in Reg A, it comes right at the beginning, and where in Reg CF, it becomes an afterthought. And I'm referring to the role of the transfer agent. And this is, I'm just saying in general, the role of the transfer agent in the many discussions we have with the issuers. It's an afterthought, no matter how many times the platforms might have made them aware of that requirement. It was sort of like the same way people were treating broker dealers under Reg A. Now they're starting to realize that, wait a minute, this is an important role. So Max, I mean, your firm, I know you guys have been there. It's been an interesting educational ride, and throughout it all, and I know you're providing that education. What more is the industry, do you think we need to do? Because I know we want the 5 to go to 20. That's obviously the next goal, to get it there. To get it there, we're going to need to demonstrate some really good statistical information to the SEC, the annual filings, proper management of the securities. So where do you think the education needs to happen? At the portal level first, and then to the issuer? Where do you see this coming from to make sure that on the post as well, that part of the team part comes in right away?
That's a great question. So we actually already posted the first 5 million deal, and it hasn't closed yet, but it's received more than, it obviously hasn't closed yet, but we're expecting it to. But I think in general, as I said before, this is a holistic issue. We need everyone playing on the same team. So the incubators, the platforms, the advisors, the lawyers, the accountants, it's all on us to work collaboratively to do the right thing, because it just takes one mess up or one bad actor to sour to sour the bunch. And I think that's one of the reasons why the SEC was comfortable expanding this registration exemption, is because the first 4 years went so well. People were very respectful. Many service providers, such as Corponex, stepped into the space and said, not only do we want to participate, but we want to thrive, and we want to encourage people to do the right thing. And many of the negative things that people assumed would happen with reg crowdfunding just never came to fruition. So my hope and my goal is that as the industry expands, people, instead of saying, let's take advantage of this, they say, okay, we have our chance to make this big. Let's protect this baby, and let's make it a normal course of business so that more people want to come and do this, and it's a trusted source of capital for companies and a way to diversify investments for investors.
Whoops, I had myself on mute. I think as an industry, we all came well together. I'm hoping that the same way, just so you know, Max, in the Reg A space, in even Etan Butler at Dalmore, I think in one of the webinars, he said a lot of the times the fact that the transfer agent, they treat it as an afterthought, but now they understand how important it is to make sure it's part of the equation right at the beginning. And this comes back to a thesis that we write, and you mentioned, Jason, thank you for your comments, is that we believe in a team sport. Crowdfunding means team. Crowdfunding doesn't mean uno, it means mucho, lots of people. And for that reason, I think we all need to play well together. I don't treat anybody as a competitor. There is no competition. We're all just growing in a very large, massive amount of space, and we need to work collaboratively together, because if we don't, we're never going to tap into the remaining 232 million Americans that we have not tapped into yet. In order, if we're going to get access to them, which we're opening in all the time, we need to keep thinking of the friction that is associated, and sometimes we need to remove ourselves from some of these parts. And I like the way everybody's working together now. I do see a shift. I will say this. I will say that from the Reg A, it was always there, that the broker-dealer knew their role. Jason did his part. They all worked collaboratively, the lawyer, the auditor, everybody knew, and it worked nicely, fluidly. It still had bumps, don't get me wrong, because we now are dealing with secondary market. I mean, this is the reality now, Max. This is what I'm bringing to you, to all of us, not me, but through this, is that if we all do our part correctly, Jason, who just bought shares in that company that just raised $5 million on the Republic platform, can now, after the whole period is done and so on, and if all is there, they can have a secondary market venue where, for the very first time, an investor can trade $10. This is the, we've been working with this with a registered ATS, the only one of its kind, to do this for, at the moment, it's the only one been FINRA approved. And first it was $100. That was our goal. Now we brought it down to $10. That's a game changer in our space, because now we are dealing with, for RegCF, Reg A, Reg D, all the way through, for the individual investor to be able to do that. And the only way that can happen is all of us working together fluidly in this. And that's going to be the key for anybody doing. And I know, Jason, a lot of the components that you provide are critical both for the primary and secondary. This is, people think that I only need investor acquisition for this part. I only need the funding portal to raise my money and I'm done. You're never done. If we only needed money once, the Jobs Act wouldn't have been created. So clearly, we all know that it takes more than that. I'd love to get your last comments on this, obviously related to the topic at hand, which is the whole idea of working together as a team, collaboratively, and then helping. So Jason first, and then I'll go to you, Max, please.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's not a finite process, more of a never-ending effort. I learned this. I was at a social gaming startup in 2010, and I started seeing our CEO. It was a full-time job to get out there and raise capital, and we did it successfully. I had changed up our investor pitch over 75 times. And then once that was complete, we were already starting to structure discussions and framework for the next round. And we're working on our fourth round with some issuers, third round with others who are seeing significant returns. Their organizations are growing. It has been a very, very valuable vehicle for them as a whole. And the team sport has changed up for them throughout that process. They've found very effective, efficient team members. They found other groups that were not able to deliver for their given roles and have had to change things up, bring on additional parties to combine different types of assets in different areas. So we subscribe to ways of thinking that include, always be raising, which took me a while to really get behind. But I'm seeing I'm seeing the user owner aspect of this really come to life. And as marketers, we look at that as the premium audience these days. So, anything we can do to make issuers more successful, whether we're a part of them or not, we try to always contribute. That's why we do pieces like this and to share insights and what we're seeing, and are very excited for the chapters ahead based on all of the successful pieces today.
Well said, Max.
So I think what's most exciting about this is that with testing the waters, you're able to start your marketing and your outreach before you actually file the Form C now. It really is going to change the way that companies approach this. Before, you had to basically be in silent mode as you were getting ready, and then one day you file your Form C and you premiered, you're out, and people can learn about it. But now you can tell people with the correct disclaimer and using the correct methods that you're actively considering this, and you want people to tell you if they're interested in investing in your company so you can decide whether to move forward. So I think testing the water is actually just going to change everything, because it'll allow companies to self-select whether or not this is a good idea. If you post via social media and make a few public announcements that you want to open yourself up for investment, and people are knocking on your door, great, I'm really interested. It's a good sign. You should plow ahead. But if you make the announcement and it's an air cannon and nothing happens, no one is coming, people are saying why, it may be a sign that you need to reassess your you may need to reassess your plan. So that's what I'm most excited about, because I think it'll help companies make a more informed decision about whether or not to utilize this registration exemption and the best method to do so.
That's perfect. Thank you, guys. And listen, obviously the journey it's just getting started for all of us. 2021 is going to be a great year. Try to keep in the back of your minds why we're all doing this all the time. I think that's I'm going to be championing for the big guy, but as well to the little guy. Anything we can all do together to give them the tools so they can be prepared to come to us. That's one of the things that I'll be working on, and I love to get everybody's support. I love the incubators; they're going to do a great job. The accelerators, but I'm always thinking of the one that isn't even going to make it there, right? And I know, Jason, I see you posting a lot of stuff for education as well. Max, the Republic team, you're doing a lot of webinars. I know we're doing our part, but I almost feel like we got to keep doing more, because I never want that company ever to say that I was never given a chance. You were given a chance. You just chose not to do the things. That's a different story, right? That's a very different story. So thank you again to both of you. Great discussion as always. Jason, having you, Max, it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Oscar.
Yeah, and congratulations on the announcement on you guys to Series A.
Oh,
I think that's
thank you.
Great endorsement to the industry from your backers out there, and for everyone else. Thank you so much once again joining us on our Core Summit webinar series. If you want to see this webinar again, you can go to coresummit.io or our YouTube channel at Core Connects. you can see Max's contact details and Jason and reach out to them. And anytime you need help on anything, please reach out. We're here to help you, introduce you to remove the friction. Have a good afternoon, a great week, everyone.